Hey everybody, hey Driven Autism Dads, it's Kyle Jetzel coming at you again from the car today. Going to pick up my daughter at high school. She's playing high school basketball, so I'm going to go pick her up. But I wanted today to talk a little bit about something that became a core part of our family early on as we tried to create a world where our kids could thrive. And it's really kind of a foundational point of the program that we've put together, and it's a foundational point of our family. And I just kind of want to describe to you how that all occurred and kind of the process. So way back when, 15 years ago or so, more than that, when we were really struggling as a family, I've already talked about in one of the videos about how I really didn't know what to do with our family. I was discouraged and frustrated and considering leaving and just saying, this isn't what I signed up for and I'm not doing this. And as I prayed about it, what I should do, I feel like the message came back to me that the problem was not my wife and it was not my kids. The problem was me. And so in attempting to solve the problem, which was me, I engaged my two oldest sons, who were at the time 9 and 7. Their names are Alec and Zach. And we were living in a little town called Red Oak, just outside of Dallas, and had a little 5-acre place that we were living in. And I remember thinking, I've got to do something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just having a meeting with my wife. Had lost all faith in me, I should say that. She and I were not on good terms at the time. She thought everything was my fault, and obviously she was right. She was playing her part in the stress as well. But I had to worry about me. I had to worry about becoming a better father and a better husband, and that's all I could really control. So I engaged my two oldest sons, Alec and Zach, who, like I said, were 9 and 7 at the time. And what we decided to do was we decided to meet every Sunday night in the evening on Sunday evening and create a plan for the week. And initially, they were only 9 and 7, and so this plan was pretty simple. And it was designed around what we would focus on for that week. And now, the very first week, I remember talking to them, and I said, so here's what we're going to do. And I got my printer out. This is back in the days. Yeah, inkjet printers and all this kind of stuff. It was pretty rudimentary. And I created a little form that said patience on it. This week we're going to focus on patience real big, right? And I printed off 2 of them to a page, and we cut them in half, and we put them all over the house. Right, we put one in each of the bathrooms. We put one on the kitchen countertop. We just put them all over the house so that we could see it consistently. And I talked to my sons and I said, "Listen, your little brother has some issues that he's still learning how to figure out, and that's why these things are happening. And he has autism, and what that means is he makes a lot of rash decisions. He can get frustrated very easily." We kind of had a discussion about what it meant for them and what we could do to best serve our little brother, right? And my son, classified as on the severe side of autism. And so I said, what we're going to do this week is I'm going to show you how to do it, and I'm going to exercise extreme patience. So anytime something goes wrong, if he starts screaming or yelling or acting crazy or whatever he does, or if he melts down, I'm just going to show so much patience and so much love, and I'm just going to hang on to that until he's absolutely done. And if it's hard, then I don't care. And I want you guys to join me. Will you do that? And both of my sons said, yeah, Dad, we'd love to do that. And I said, what we're going to try to do is really do a good job of serving our little brother and showing him that we love him. And he obviously has some difficulties that we need to help with. And how we can help this week is show patience. And I also told them, I said, at the end of the week, next Sunday, we're going to meet together again, and we're going to do 3 things. We're going to talk about what we did good, We're gonna praise each other about how we did some good things, and then we're gonna think about in our own minds what we could have done better. So I'm not going to tell you what you could have done better, and you're not going to tell me, and we're not going to tell each other. But we're going to think to ourselves, what could I have done better? And think about the next time those things happen, how we could upgrade our level of patience. And then the third thing is we're going to create a new focus for the next week. How does that sound? And they were all in. My two sons were all in, and my wife did not participate in this. She was pretty upset and angry with me. Like I said, she had lost faith in me for good reason. I was the reason that there were a lot of problems, and I took responsibility for that. Whether it was all my fault or not didn't really matter. I was going to be the solution. And my initial solution was, we're just going to create a once a week. We're going to meet once a week, and we're going to do this every week. We're going to create a weekly focus. We're going to put it on a piece of paper. We're going to stick it up, and we're all going to work really hard. And then we're going to come back at the end of the week, and we're going to say, what did we do right, and praise each other. And we'll see that, because we're really focused on it. What could we have done better? And we'll think about it ourselves, and we'll do some self, review, kind of our own thought processes and what we did. And the third thing is create a new focus. And I want you guys to think about some new focuses. And the goal is to help. What can we do to serve our little brother and help him as much as we possibly can? And it was pretty neat to watch their buy-in, because throughout the week, that very first week, they would come to me and say, hey, Dad, here's what happened. And I was really patient. And it was just, I'm starting to tear up, because I remember how much joy it brought to them. And obviously that joy was reflected in me to them. And I had the same attitude. Something would go wrong, and I would it was extreme patience with not only my son who's on the autism spectrum, my more severe son, but my two boys who were typical, and my wife, and everybody. We had a really patient week. And we started stacking these different, initially they were just virtues, right? We just picked virtues out of a book and just started trying that. And over a period of time, we started to create some strategies. And specifically for defiance, specifically for when he wouldn't eat, to help potty train him. That was a doozy. It took us a long time to get that to happen, but it was worth it, because we figured it out eventually, right? And that was what it was about. It's not necessarily changing him, but changing our reactions to him, so that it would create new patterns for him as well. Because it didn't help when he got ramped up. That when my two sons, typical sons, got crazy and angry when he got mad, it didn't help. And when I got angry and mad, it didn't help. None of that helped. So our goal was really to just serve him better. Well, over a period of time, as we created these strategies, the strategies got, some of them didn't work and they were horrible, and we threw them out. I mean, there's some, I probably have 7 or 8 books on ABA in my library. Some of those strategies worked great. Some of them worked horrible. But what I started to realize is that we needed some sort of a foundation, that everything we did had to fit within a foundation, right? There were certain questions or certain things we had to create that we built everything upon. It's kind of like, when they build a building, right? They pour a foundation, and the taller the building is, the deeper that foundation needs to be, right? And so we really needed to create some pillars for ourselves. We ended up calling them pillars of success. And these became the foundation in which we created all our strategies on, and all of our efforts became grounded in these 3 pillars. And I'll tell you what those were, because they were really exciting for us when we finally figured out what they were. So the number 1 pillar is, we're going to do what's best for Eric long term, not what's best for him short term. A lot of people do what's best for their kids short term without thinking long term what's going to happen. And I'll give you a quick example. And let me finish the pillar though. We're going to do what's best for Eric long term, even if it's really hard. And that's important, because some of the things we could have done could have been best for him short term, and ultimately would have caused other problems down the road. One of those was, we also knew a family that had a son was severely autistic, and they would restrain him. And when he was little. And as he got bigger and bigger, it became more and more difficult until he became violent. And their conclusion was we taught him that, because when he would get out of control, we would hold him tight and wrap him up and control him. And so when he got older, he started to think, this is their perception, and I think it has some validity to it. Their perception is that he thought, okay, now that I'm bigger, if somebody does something I don't like, I can restrain them. Now, that meant hitting, kicking, biting, all those things that they can grow out of if we help them. So they had to be, that was our first pillar. We're going to do what's best for Eric long term, even if it's really hard, right? So we were willing to do the work, to commit to those things that might take months, weeks or months or even years, to help him understand what was correct and what was proper. We were going to do what was best for him long term, even if it was hard. The second pillar we came up with, and this is me and my two older sons. I wonder if they even remember this now. I'll ask them this weekend. They're both, my two older sons now are grown up and married, and have sweet wives, and they're over at the house all the time, which I love, which means they're not trying to escape the craziness, right? They love our home, and they love their brother, even though he still is difficult sometimes. They love him. And what a blessing that is, right? I mean, and that's a little peek into what we can accomplish. So the second pillar became, we're going to do what's best for our family, even if it's really hard. Best for our family long term, even if it's really hard. And that meant we had to make some decisions that were hard for us, right? And you might say, well, those two could be in conflict, but they never were. What was best for Eric long term was what was best for our family long term, and what was best for our family long term was what was best for Eric long term. It's funny how those aligned. Almost 99% of the time they aligned, and when they didn't align, we had to rethink the whole thought. I mean, it really had to dig in a little deeper and figure out what we were going to do. And the third pillar, which is the hardest of all, but what I think is the absolute most important pillar in the foundation we built as a family, was we're going to do it in a spirit of love, especially when it's hard. And that makes more sense when you combine the three pillars. We're going to do what's best for Eric long term, even if it's hard. We're going to do what's best for our family long term, even if it's hard. And we're always going to do it in the spirit of love, right? And so what does that mean in the spirit of love? It doesn't mean we're going to do things out of anger or frustration or discouragement. It means we're going to think this stuff through. We're going to create strategies and create processes for our family, and create traditions and systems, but it has to be done in a spirit of love, right? Because things that aren't done in a spirit of love can go horribly wrong horribly quickly. I know we made a lot of mistakes, and we saw the side effects of those mistakes early on, and so that became our three pillars. So I'm going to repeat those for you because these are really cool. And if you create these as your foundation in your family, then you're on the right track. If every decision you make is based on these three foundations, we're going to do what's best for our child on the spectrum long term, even if it's hard. And that'll change the way you parent. It'll change the way you discipline. It'll change the way you love. And it'll change you, because it forces you to work. And that's good, because we need to work to give these kids the best chance of success. The second one was, we're going to do what's best long term for our family, even if it's hard. And that's going to force you to work too. And we're always going to do it in the spirit of love, especially when it's really hard. And I say especially when it's really hard, because that is when it's the hardest, right? When you're exhausted or tired or frustrated, or it's been a 4 or 5 hour meltdown, or it's been meltdown after meltdown all day long, and you're frustrated. It's so easy to fall into the trap of just giving up, or just quitting, or just screaming people down, or just leaving, right? Abandoning your spouse with the child. All these things, we're going to do what's right. We're going to do things in a spirit of love, especially when it's hard. So those are the three pillars. If you can import those into your family, dads, if you'll just start doing them to yourself and start repeating them to yourself. I'm going to do what's best for my kid on the spectrum long term, even if it's hard. I'm going to do what's best for my family long term, even if it's hard. And I'm going to do it in a spirit of love, especially when it's really hard. Think about those, write them down, put them somewhere where you can see them frequently, and it'll change you, which is the greatest thing of all. And it'll start to change your family. It'll start to change your typical kids. It'll start to change your child on the spectrum. When you start doing things in a spirit of love, when it gets really hard, watch what happens. Watch the patterns you break in your autistic kiddos. And those kiddos that don't understand sometimes certain things, they understand love. And they understand when you're doing things in a spirit of love. And it may not seem like it all the time, but I promise you, from a guy who's raised 2 sons on the spectrum who are now 22 and 20 years old, I have 6 kids. I've raised a lot of kids. My 2 youngest are now in high school. So I'm getting up there in age, and I have a lot of experience, but I promise you, if you'll import those things, it'll change your wife. The way she'll start watching you, and she'll start saying, what are you doing? Now, it may take a week or a month or years. It took my family years. But you know what? It was worth it. It was worth it, because it's okay to die trying if it's a valiant effort. And doing what's best for your family, doing what's best for your kids on the spectrum, your typical kids, and your wife, and doing it in a spirit of love is a valiant thing to do. And even if you die trying, it's well worth it. So I'm going to leave that with you today. 3 things to remember. Write them down. We're always going to do what's best for our kiddos on the spectrum, long term, even if it's hard. We're always going to do what's best for our kids, our family, long term, even if it's hard. And we're always going to do it in the spirit of love. And those 3, if you can create those 3 pillars and believe in them and abide by them, it'll change you. It'll change your kids. It'll change your kiddos on the spectrum, and it'll change your relationship with your wife. I promise you. Hopefully that's helpful, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.